Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the fourth series of A Taste of Techstars Sustainability. Super excited about today's session. We have some awesome guests joining us from the Nature Conservancy. And in case it's your first time tuning in, the Taste of Techstars Sustainability is a chance for us to outsize our impact and support more companies across the world working in sustainability and give people a feel for what our program's about as applications are open now through May 10th. I'll let August talk about TNC, but real quick, if you're not familiar with Techstars, we are a worldwide network supporting entrepreneurs in a lot of different ways. One of those is through our 3-month mentorship-driven accelerator programs, where we offer up to 120K in funding and world-class mentorship on both the business side and the subject matter expert side from our lovely partner, the Nature Conservancy. We're based in Denver, Colorado, and just super excited to have you all join us today. And I think with that, I'll hand it over to August. And also just a note, you can introduce yourself in the chat and ask questions either in the chat or the Q&A section. We'll probably go through kind of a brief overview, and then later we're going to have a good amount of time to open up to questions. So don't hold back, starting to put those in anytime. So with that, thanks to all of our guests, and I'll hand over to August.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here. I recognized 20 seconds ago. I was like, oh, it'd be a cool thing to do is to share this video that's hot off the press. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining the call. My name is August Ritter. I'm joined by several of my colleagues from the Nature Conservancy who will introduce themselves and talk about their role in the Sustainability Accelerator in a couple of minutes. First off, I'm going to do a quick self-introduction. I'm also going to talk about at a high level why the Nature Conservancy decided to launch this partnership with Techstars. Talk about, again, at a high level, what our role is within the accelerator, give a very brief snapshot of who the Nature Conservancy is. A lot of folks know who we are, some folks don't, and I think to kind of help steer the conversation, it's probably worthwhile to just spend a little bit of time giving people a sense of who TNC is. And then we're going to really start to dig in a little bit more in detail into what TNC's role is, how we're actually involved in the accelerator, and we're going to do that through some case studies, just talking to my colleagues who were involved last year. And then we're going to open it up for question and answer with this group. As Hannah Davis mentioned at the top of the call, please enter your questions into the chat box, and we'll work our way through those after myself and my colleagues are done giving this short presentation. So with that, I think it's probably just a good way to launch into it. Why the Sustainability Accelerator? It's a pretty unique partnership between the world's largest conservation organization and Techstars. Really, there was 3 objectives that we came into this partnership with. The first was just leveraging technology for sustainability. There's this recognition that we need to be integrating technology much more into kind of the sustainability movement, the environmental movement. And one way to do that is to, frankly, find those entrepreneurs, those technologists who are building companies, solving problems that we care about, and helping those entrepreneurs, helping those companies solve those problems. The second, and it's pretty related, is really kind of the idea that we need to stimulate and grow the market for sustainability technology. And so, that's part of the objective here, right? It's not just about the 10 companies we bring into the accelerator. It's really about the entire market. It's about the need for more entrepreneurs and more technologists to be getting into this space, to be utilizing their skills and their resources and their talents to, again, solve problems, right? Some of humanity's biggest problems. And we need more investors putting money into this space, investing in companies that are doing that. And then lastly, we wanted to create a platform for the Nature Conservancy to better integrate technology into how we operate. We recognize, like most other organizations in the conservation world, we are far behind the times. We are not utilizing cutting edge technology to advance our mission in the way we should, right? It's 2020, let's start acting like it. So those were the three kind of primary objectives with which we launched this accelerator really back in 2017. It's a 3-year partnership, so we ran an accelerator in 2018, an accelerator in 2019, running another accelerator in 2020, and I'm raising funds currently to run a 4th accelerator in 2021 as well. So happy to answer any questions folks might have about our objectives and how we feel like achieving these objectives has gone the past 2 years. In terms of what our role is here, and this is really kind of, I think, the primary substance of today's call is to kind of dig into this. But at a very high level, the ways that we are involved is we look to leverage our expertise, right? So we ask ourselves, can we at the Nature Conservancy help you improve your product? Can we increase your sustainability impact? And can we help you expand your reach? And really kind of on that last note, in terms of your reach, we look at leveraging our network, right? TNC is the world's largest conservation organization. We work with companies, governments, indigenous groups around the world to advance the environmental movement. And so is there a way that we can utilize our network to really benefit the companies that come into the accelerator? Thirdly, we look to engage directly. So we look to pilot the cutting edge technology that the companies who are in the accelerator have within our project and portfolio of programs across the Conservancy. We're in all 50 states and 79 countries. And then lastly, we look to learn from you, from the entrepreneurs in the program. This is not simply a give from TNC's point of view. We actually take a lot away from our interaction with you all. You come at this with a really unique perspective, and there's a lot that you can teach us as well. So we'll talk more about that. And I'm going to kind of slam through the next couple of slides in terms of who TNC is at a very high level, but happy, again, to dig into any pieces that folks are most curious about. So we could spend the whole hour talking about the Nature Conservancy's long journey to get to where we are today. Our first program launched in 1951 in upstate New York. We've had a long journey to get to where we are today with an almost $1 billion budget, again, operating in almost 80 countries around the world. Our team, we have 4,000 conservationists around the world, 400 scientists that are, thinking strategically about how do we build the science that the world needs to craft the bridge to the sustainable futures that we know is possible. But really the biggest asset we have is not so much really even TNC employees or the number of countries we're in. It's the folks that we work with. It's the partnerships that we have and that we've invested years and decades into building around the world with universities, indigenous communities, corporations, policy makers, local land trusts, local nonprofits, and now even the health community as well. This is a really daunting slide. I'm not going to spend much time here. It kind of goes to show, I think, a little bit of our scientific chops. About 5, 6, 7 years ago, TNC kind of took a couple steps back and said, hey, let's do a global situation analysis. What are the key challenges to people and nature around the world? Through that assessment, we highlighted 8 global challenges that needed to be tackled in terms of building a sustainable future. These were those eight challenges. I'm happy again to come back to the slide and talk about those. But that situation analysis, the recognition of these 8 challenges, has led to kind of creating our plan. So our vision here is a world where people and nature thrive. We do that through a protect strategy, a transform strategy, and an inspire strategy. And then really our priorities are rooted in 4 thematic areas: tackle climate change, protect land and water, provide food and water sustainably, and build healthy cities. These 4 priority areas guide all of our work, and they guide our recruitment themes for the 2020 Accelerator, right? So we're looking for companies that are, helping solve these four priorities. And yeah, again, happy to really dig into this. We can talk a lot more about our 2020 investment themes. These are really broad categories, and there's a sub themes within these big themes that we're most excited about, and frankly have the most expertise in learning more about that. So, getting to the substance of the call, I think, and why most of you are probably joined in today, really talking about what TNC's role is in the Sustainability Accelerator. So I mentioned 4 ways, and we're going to talk about all 4 of those here in a minute. The one way I didn't mention is kind of the financing. So the Nature Conservancy is one of the funding partners here that makes the program possible. We pay Techstars in this partnership to run an accelerator every year to kind of make the whole thing work. The next most critical aspect here is our expertise, right? So I mentioned those 4,000 conservationists around the world. 400 of them are scientists. Each of the companies that we bring in gets paired with 2 to 3 to sometimes 4 subject matter experts from across the Nature Conservancy. And those folks fly to Denver. We've done in-person accelerators in the past. We're having a conversation right now about whether or not our 2020 accelerator will be virtual or in person, given the current situation with COVID-19. But regardless, again, in 2020, we'll kind of be doing matchmaking with the relevant TNC experts with each of the 10 companies in the program. And those experts will sign on to giving at least an hour per week through demo day, during the 13-week program, to really be thought partners and kind of roll up their sleeves and get in the trenches with you to help think about how you can maximize your impact. One of those subject matter experts is on the call with us here today to talk more about her background and how she worked with companies in the 2019 Accelerator. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Renee Vassilos. Thank you, Renee, for being here, for joining us.
Thank you, August. This is great. Thank you. Thanks so much, August. Such a great review. Just a quick background on myself. I've been with the Nature Conservancy for 6 months. I am an agricultural economist by training, and it is in fact this Techstars collaboration that was one of the reasons that I joined the Nature Conservancy. I find it to be a really forward-thinking and progressive attempt to figure out how we can move further and faster towards those 4 priorities that August highlighted. And so, again, a little bit of my background, agricultural economist by training. I was with John Deere, which it looks like there's a bunch of maybe some international non-US folks in attendance. So John Deere is one of the larger US agricultural equipment manufacturing companies. They play a big role in mostly large-scale agriculture across the globe. So I worked for them for almost 10 years. And then the 3 years before joining the Nature Conservancy, I ran my own agribusiness consultancy, and we worked very closely with early stage agriculture focused companies, supporting on business development growth. And then also a large part of the business was supporting investors to do due diligence on investments in the agriculture space. So some of the support that I provide the Techstars cohort is around that investor component. So really helping folks be looking at your pitch decks with kind of an investor lens, looking at your business models and financials with that investor lens, and then also helping around mock pitches. So making sure that what you are putting together is what investors are looking for and are often asking about. And then also because I've had some diverse experiences before John Deere, I was also with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and lived abroad for quite some time. What I also bring to the table, and many of the other experts at the Nature Conservancy bring, is a pretty diverse network. So we have pretty extensive contacts both within the Nature Conservancy, or who of those scientists might be beneficial or supportive, but also a lot of the other boots on the ground folks with the Nature Conservancy, but then also beyond the Nature Conservancy. Yeah, that's what I would say that I do. I enjoy tremendously working with entrepreneurs. I find it, I have a great deal of respect for folks that are getting after and starting their own businesses. Actually, for me, it's one of the bright lights of the things that I get to do. So, yeah, any questions? We're happy to answer them. I'll turn it back to you, August.
Thanks, Renee. Really appreciate it. Yeah, and so Renee, right? Renee is one of many folks who have leaned in last year. She's got unique perspective. Not everybody has the kind of insight into kind of how impact investors are thinking, but all of the subject matter experts that we bring into the accelerator have really valuable insight, whether or not it's a scientist that can help a company who's working on, advancing carbon sequestration in soil, really think about how to do that in a science-based way, or, somebody who works for the Nature Conservancy who spent 20 years working with water utilities and can help a company whose target market is, the utility sector, really think about how to get into that market and what kind of distribution approach you should be thinking about, et cetera. So that's the first bucket, the leverage our expertise bucket. The second bucket is really around leveraging our network. And so I'm going to talk for just a minute around one case study and an example. I think that's a great story to share around the ability, the power of the network that we have and how that can benefit the companies we bring into the accelerator. So the example is with a 2019 company called Second Nature. They're a company that builds cloud-based software analytics to help municipalities manage stormwater runoff. They're based in California, and they already have a decent customer base, but we're looking to expand that customer base. And so the Nature Conservancy had 4 TNC subject matter experts who worked with them over the course of the 3 months to help really think about how to do that, think about how to build a software that can help cities manage stormwater in a more effective way. And from our perspective, help cities really understand the power of green infrastructure in managing stormwater. It's one of TNC's kind of biggest priorities within our Build Healthy Cities work is really helping cities invest more dollars in building out green infrastructure for all of the co-benefits that it provides. So we approached the EPA. The EPA had a stormwater division and asked them about their interest in co-hosting a webinar with the Nature Conservancy to talk about this exciting technology and the benefits that it could bring municipalities. And so the EPA agreed to do that and hosted a webinar with their network. There was over 400 folks joined from across the United States, everyone from the state level, the municipal level, different regulators within the EPA, joined the call to learn more about the power of cloud-based analytic software in terms of accomplishing the goals of the Clean Water Act. It was a really powerful call that was extremely beneficial for this company and really for, I think, the movement of moving paper-based management towards digital software. And for that example, we have a number of others as well. So happy to talk about other examples around kind of the power of leveraging our network. I will flag that it's always a double opt-in. The startups in the accelerator don't get to just kind of open up the TNC Rolodex and say, okay, we want an introduction to this group or that group. We do that, but then of course TNC goes and asks our partners, if they would like an introduction to the company as well. And so as soon as there's a double opt-in, we facilitate that introduction, and then it's kind of up to you to take it from there. So the third bucket here is really engaging directly. I think it's one of the most exciting things that we do. And so to talk more about it, I'll turn it over to Brian Piazza to talk more about his example in piloting a particular project with one of the companies in our 2019 accelerator. Brian?
Thanks, August. Can you hear me all right, everybody?
Yes, you can hear you great.
Okay, good. Thank you. My name is Brian Piazza. I am the Director of Freshwater and Marine Science for the Nature Conservancy's chapter in Louisiana. I am a wetland ecologist. I've been working on big rivers and wetlands and floodplain wetlands in Louisiana for somewhere around 20 years, probably. And one of the roles that I've taken on in TNC has been the role of working with one of our important whole system projects in the Nature Conservancy, and that is the Mississippi River Basin. So in the Mississippi River Basin whole system project, We bring together states that are working on common issues that affect the Mississippi River Basin, Gulf of Mexico, and that one issue that we rallied around was nutrient pollution. So excess fertilizer runoff that comes from 2/3 of the country passes by me here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and out to the Gulf of Mexico through the Mississippi River. And this is one, and causes a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And for those of you from around the world, you may or may not live near a dead zone because there's a lot of them globally and they are growing. And so what we have tried to do is figure out ways to work with partners to reduce nutrient pollution and nutrient loading, so particularly nitrate into the Mississippi River, and also to use wetland restoration to be able to remove that excess nitrate before it hits the Gulf of Mexico. In our program, we have colleagues from all over the river basin working together. I serve as the team lead for the science team. And one of the issues that we were working on, and we still are working on, is how do we really successfully measure nitrates in the river, and whether or not any of the conservation actions that us and the conservation community is taking, be it working with agriculture or wetland restoration, is any of that really working? And that's a big problem, because we don't in the Mississippi River Basin have the monitoring in place to be able to answer that question. In many cases, the Mississippi River is treated as two different rivers in the northern part of our country and the southern part of our country, and that's a big problem. So one of the things our science team has tackled is figuring out ways to be the ignition for robust basin-wide monitoring. So figuring out what we know and what we need to know, and also figuring out how to get to a place where basin-wide monitoring is possible, funded, and implemented in as short a period of time as possible. That's how I met with Jibe. August sent me a video of the company and asked if I had any ideas. And when I saw what they were doing with their technology, I had a whole lot of ideas, and I participated on a call because I immediately saw their company and their technology interacting perfectly with our vision for basin-wide nitrate monitoring. So when I met with Jibe, they were beginning to get going, and they were focused a lot on trying to get into the aquaculture space, which is a very good space for them. And I've been pushing them and working on pilot projects with them to try to expand the use of their technology and even improve their technology to be very good at measuring nitrate. Because if we can do that, because their technology relies on remote sensing from satellites, once the data sets are trained, I could see how the satellite passage, we have enough satellite passage to get near real time, certainly real time enough for our management purposes, but being able to monitor nitrate on broad swaths of the country every week. And so we have 2 pilot projects in the lower Mississippi Basin so that we can test their technology on the muddy water of the Mississippi, of the lower Mississippi River. And it's very good. And I've actually, where the data sets are looking pretty good right now. We're doing a lot of intensive testing. And the other thing we're doing is I'm trying to support anytime they get into other accelerators or grant opportunities, we're trying to jointly fundraise to bring their technology to the next level. And so I keep them always in my mind, provide support letters for them. I still mentor them every week. And the best part about their company is that they're all just really, really nice guys. I love working with them. I care about them a lot. I want them to make a lot of money doing really good things for the planet. And I do whatever I can to help move that along. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate your sharing that case study. Yeah, and just to kind of to further flesh that out a little bit, just for folks kind of reference, we typically, our pilot project sizes have kind of ranged $30,000. So, I think it's a good thing to highlight so folks don't have these expectations of, a $250,000 pilot project coming into the accelerator. We don't have any historical record of that happening. But hopefully, and we found that these have proven to be really valuable for the companies. And then the other thing I'll just flag here is that we always do need to be cognizant of TNC's standard operating procedures. We have documents that kind of outline how we work with for-profit companies, and so we operate within the parameters of TNC's guidelines. So again, just something that we want to highlight and talk more about if folks were interested in joining the accelerator. Lastly, I want to turn it over to Hannah Boucher from Nebraska to do a quick self-introduction and talk more about how TNC has engaged here in terms of learning from the companies that we work with. Techstars has this great motto. It's called "Give First," and so we try with everything we do to approach with a give first mentality. Kind of putting it out there and helping people that we work with, but at the same time, we recognize that we also want to get better ourselves and learn from the people that we work with. And so this has provided a really unique opportunity to work with a group of people, particularly technology entrepreneurs that we haven't worked with to date, and provided us with a really unique perspective. So Hannah, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, August. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Great. My name is Hannah Boucher, and I'm the Director of Agriculture for the Nebraska Operating Unit of the Nature Conservancy. And so unlike some of the folks you've heard from TNC, I am very firmly based within a single state. So my purview is the state of Nebraska. My background, I have a master's degree in soil carbon science and a PhD in natural resources management. So I have a really sort of strong educational background. I like to joke that I sacrificed my youth for education. So when I came to TNC, I was really sort of immersed in a very academic approach. And over time, I've really evolved, and I've started to learn that when you take the best available science and you apply it to the ground, it's messy. And things don't go according to plan. And how do we operationalize and systematize that mess in a way that creates, actionable intelligence and reducible uncertainty? So that's really the model that we use. And when I started to engage with Techstars, I found that was really common thread. So similar, really strong conceptual framework, really strong sort of financing thesis. But then when things touch down on the ground, it gets messy. And so how do you navigate that in a way that proceeds towards your long-term goal while still getting your near-term objectives met? So that's I think that's one thing that I really took home from the first Techstars, is that really shared sort of sense of focus. Then there are ways that I think Techstars culture and TNC culture really do diverge, and there are great opportunities to learn from each other. So you have probably 4 of the most risk comfortable folks at TNC on the phone right now. TNC tends to be very risk averse, and for good reason. We're community based. We've been working in many of these communities for decades. And so by ensuring that we're reducing risk, we can maintain that long-standing relationship that's based on trust, mutual understanding, et cetera. I think as August referred to, as TNC starts to branch out into these new areas, we're learning that we need to become more comfortable with risk. And so one thing I've learned is that Techstars groups really helped us understand how to become comfortable with risk and how to take a big, bold step forward that embraces risk, doesn't hide from it, but is also safe and in respect to sort of the communities we're working with. So that was a great thing that I learned from Techstars, and I think my other colleagues who were involved in the process did. One thing I hope and think that Techstars learned from us was how to engage with communities. So again, a place where we diverged. When our team in Nebraska goes and we work with farmers and ranchers primarily, we know that it usually takes decades to create a trusting relationship, to create a relationship where we can go to a farmer and ask them to adopt a new practice, a new technology. It's really risky, but they know and they trust us, so they'll do it. And so we're really careful about slowly building that trust. When companies, we work with a lot of private agribusinesses, they come to us and they say, we want to do a conservation project. And if they come to me in 2020, I say, the very soonest we could start is 2021. And if you come to me late in 2020, it's going to be 2022. That's the kind of time frame that we work with when we're sort of developing these projects. When we started working with Techstars and they said, when do you think we could actually start kind of moving on some of these potential projects. And I said, 2020, and it was mid 2019. That just didn't jive with sort of the typical startup timescale. And so learning how to adjust to one another, finding out ways like, are there spots where you can mimic that sort of long-term trust and leverage some of TNC's trust to open the door to companies? And where is it simply incompatible was, I think, a place where the companies that we engaged with learned from us. So I would say those are the common thread is sort of the understanding that we need to take calculated risks and systems are messy. And then the divergent areas where we've learned from each other is us becoming more sort of risk embracing in some contexts, and a lot of the startups understanding the time that's really involved in creating these relationships. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Hannah. Really, really appreciate you and your perspective. So we're going to open it up to questions really quickly, though. I think I meant to do this at the top of the call and didn't. Just my own kind of self-introduction. So I'm the program director from the Nature Conservancy for the Sustainability Accelerator. And what that means is I'm really kind of at the nexus between Techstars and Hannah and Zach, as well as the 10 companies we bring into the accelerator and the Nature Conservancy. And so my job, my day-to-day role is really just trying to figure out how to make this thing as beneficial as possible, both for TNC's mission and for the companies that we're working with. And so I think, as we talked about these 4 different buckets, and as Renee and Brian and Hannah talked through, how we engage, really my role is trying to help facilitate that as much as I can, both during the 3 months and then after the accelerator is over with. So again, happy to talk more about my role, but I think it's important for folks on the call to understand kind of that's who I am and how I fit into this. So with that, why don't I stop sharing? We'll go here. Looks like we only have 2 questions in the Q&A, so please, if folks, if you do have questions, please pop them in here. No need for us to take the rest of the hour, but it'd be great to see other folks with more questions. This is Kev, I believe. I'm wondering if TNC has any waterless toilets at their conservancy. We're working on solving the global sanitation problem, and if there are any experts in that field. So, the Nature Conservancy has a number of preserves. We have a number of places where we actually own land and have facilities. I can't tell you for certain if many of them have waterless toilets. I would imagine that some do. In fact, I'm very confident that they do. But couldn't tell you for certain. And I wouldn't say, waterless toilets or even gray infrastructure is TNC's kind of core competency here, really around kind of water savings. We focus more on kind of the agricultural space in terms of kind of water savings and irrigation, as well as, the role that nature can play in terms of improving water quality for, downstream. Another chat we just got here, and then I'm going to go to the 3 questions in the Q&A from Daniel. What's the best way for someone to start engaging with Techstars and ecosystem? Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I would just encourage you to shoot Hannah Davis an email, as well as myself an email. So my email, I'll just tap it into the chat box so folks have it, and Hannah just put hers in. That's the best way to kind of start the conversation. So email Hannah and I. All right, so going over to the Q&A, what is the scope of your work in Africa?
August.
Yeah.
August, maybe before we jump to that, so Kev,
Yes.
Your question about global sanitation, we do have a team that works around global cities, and I suspect there's probably some folks that are working on the global sanitation problem. So maybe not specific on the toilets, but it is absolutely part of our scope.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. Appreciate it. Very much so. I don't actually have all the details, but I know that's something that we're working on as well. So if folks are curious, we can, again, email me and we'll look into it more. All right. Is Brad Feld involved still, from Alex? Yeah, Brad's been a great partner of ours. He's involved both in 2018 and 2019. I suspect he'll be involved in 2020 as well. He's been a long time. Him and his wife, Amy Batcher, have been longtime supporters of the Nature Conservancy, and Brad is a co-founder of Techstars, and so he's just been a phenomenal advocate for this partnership, and I very much imagine he'll continue to be in 2020. And then going to Deborah's question, what is the scope of your work in Africa? So, I can't say for certain. Hannah, Renee, Brian, do either of you know exactly how many countries we're in? I want to say it's something like 10 or, yeah.
I do not know.
So,
I know
yeah,
our work currently is concentrated in Eastern Africa, so Kenya, Tanzania region, but it's not limited to that.
right. Yeah, I know
And
we've
some of
met
our
some.
work, oops,
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm sorry, August.
No, go ahead.
Some of our work in those countries is focused on, I know, fuel wood and the effect on and the sustainability of the forests with fuel wood, charcoal, those types of things. And also, we're very involved with the intersection of human health and its effect on water use, sanitation, and also fisheries, particularly on like Lake Tanganyika and some of the other large lakes where artisanal fisheries is where people are getting their food from. And we can connect you to people in those countries if that's necessary at some time.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, happy, Deborah, to learn a little bit more about you and the effort you're involved in, and make the connect to our Africa team if it makes sense. The Jin asked, beyond tech and business parts, what would you consider the most when you meet startup founders? Yeah, so I'll offer my thoughts, and then would love Brian, Renee, and Hannah if you want to jump in as well on this, and same with you, Hannah Davis. Yeah, one of the things I think that I've appreciated more and more through the past 2 years of this partnership and to work with so many different founders is the need for just a commitment's not the right word, because it's more than commitment. Brad talks about obsession, and that has some negative connotations, but it's this recognition that the path forward is a long one. Right? You're not building a SaaS platform that you're selling, the B2B SaaS platform. You are trying to help change the world, and that's not something that's going to happen in the next 6 months. And so, finding founders who kind of have in their gut this immense amount of fire to just solve the problem, and they're going to stick with it for half a decade or a decade, as daunting as that seems, is to me kind of the most critical part. Even more important than the tech and the business pieces, because the rest of it doesn't really matter if folks are willing to kind of throw in the towel after 2 or 3 years of encountering challenges and barriers. So that's something that I really kind of look at when we connect with founders and get to know them and get to know their companies is how in it are they, right? So yeah, Renee, Hannah, Brian, thoughts?
I have some, definitely.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Renee. Sorry. The weird world of social interaction over a video screen. So I definitely have thoughts on this. What the things that I really like most about the founders of Jibe immediately were their dedication and their drive. These were guys who all came out of the semiconductor industry or professorships, and they were like leaving. They have families. They were taking a huge risk, and I just admire that in a person to be able to do that. I don't know that I could do what they did in terms of risk. I'm really not sure. The second thing was their humility and their extreme dedication to learning. The thing that I learned most at the Techstars at the first meeting was that all of these mentors were saying, if you give selflessly, they will take, and you will get something in return. But what I couldn't believe was the humility, and the more that I give this company, the more they are willing to take. And we have this open relationship about that. And I don't mean to say that in taking that sounds like a negative connotation, but what I mean is that they take advice, they take help, and I think that's really hard for people sometimes to do. And then third, I alluded to it before. I'm a people person. I love knowing who I'm dealing with and people's stories. And I know these guys now because I ask them, and they share, and we've learned together on some installations where I was able to help with some local expertise here in Louisiana, and we struggled through some stuff together, and and we were able to drink a couple beers and sit back when it was done and say, tell me about yourself. And I just think it's awesome. I think that those things are what I have taken from this company and why I still continue to give as hard as I can to this day.
Thanks, Brian. That's great. Renee?
Yeah, so I would probably echo what August and Brian said. To me, it's all about your why. So why are you doing this? Where does that come from? And then, as again, August alluded to, is your tech and business parts will change, because naturally what you initially thought you were getting after 3 years of slaving away, you may have to pivot. And so what's so important is, that you really have a good, solid understanding of your why. And that helps when you have to be doing those pivots and taking the advice from folks who are on the ground and maybe challenging some of your assumptions and steering you in new directions because of opportunities. And then I admire entrepreneurs so much. So it's that incredible risk taking that many of you are doing or are looking to start doing. But having a solid why is it for me.
And then Hannah.
I'll reiterate what everyone said, especially on Renee's point. She called it pivoting. I call it be willing to kill your darlings. So usually the ideas and the approaches, that you're sort of most attached to and you admire the most are probably the ones where you have the most blind spots. And that goes for TNC and for, the companies we worked with in the Techstars. But the willingness to let go of that, and when you're confronted with someone testing your assumptions, as Renee said, or some sort of roadblock, I noticed a really strong tendency, like problem solve, which is good in a lot of cases, but sometimes you just have to pivot and start with something totally new, and problem solving is not going to work. So I would agree. I'd look for someone willing to kill their darlings.
It's an interesting phrasing. I like it, Hannah. Hannah Davis, anything you want to add, or should we move on to Jack's question?
No, that was all great. Thanks so much for those perspectives.
So Jack asked, is sustainability and climate change education? So the answer is yes, it's on our radar. TNC does some work with youth, but I would not say it's, kind of in our area of core competency. But it is very much something that we recognize is a critical component of changing the conversation. So answer is yes, Jack, and then would love to learn more about where your question's coming from. So email me. Just really quickly, a quick anecdote on this that I think is worth sharing, Jack, just because you asked this specific question that I really think about a decent amount. There's an environmental leader called Gus Speth. He co-founded World Resources Institute and Environmental Defense Fund. Natural Resource Defense Council. And in the 70s, he talks about how the group of environmentalists came together and said, oh my gosh, climate change is happening. What should we do about this? Should we focus our efforts on, educating the youth, or should we focus our efforts on, getting CEOs and senators and congresspeople, to move the needle on climate legislation? And they decided to focus on the latter, to really focus on, kind of the upper level of society, if you will. And they really, he said, regretted that decision, because what had ended up happening was, 30 years later, you have an entire generation that's questioning, the science around climate change. So anyway, I think all of us in the environmental movement need to recognize that we have to be really focused on making sure the next generation is educated about these issues.
Because do you mind if I add?
Yeah, do you mind if I add?
Yeah, so some of these questions are great. I would just reemphasize to August's earlier points. TNC was incredibly intentional with our 4 global priorities and exactly how that work touches down. So I think it would be a good idea before you get too far down the road to make sure that your work fits with what we're already doing because folks are fairly well committed. 80% of our work is supposed to be to these priorities as they've been laid out, and they're very detailed. There is always some flexibility, but I just don't want folks to get too far down the road and then they realize that they're not going to find a good peer mentor because we don't necessarily have that specific expertise.
Yeah, and we'll, as you engage with, myself and Hannah Davis, we'll make sure that we're communicating about if you're in the lane or not, essentially. Hannah, would you go ahead and plug into the chat box our recruiting framework for folks, just to Hannah Boucher's point about, thank you. There you go. Already done. All right, let me just go through. It looks like there might be more questions. No more questions in the Q&A. Any questions in the... Okay, from Jack, when you say one of your priorities is to tackle climate change, how broad is that? Can you go into that in detail? Yeah, so let me share my screen again. So can you guys, Renee, Brian, can you flag for me that you can see my screen? Renee or Hannah or Brian, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. So the link that Hannah just sent kind of should show something very similar probably at the bottom of that blog post. And these outline, the sub-themes. To your point, Jack, right? Tackle climate change is so broad. One of the challenges here, particularly being branded as the Sustainability Accelerator, is that folks kind of think anything and everything that falls underneath sustainability kind of fits within the priorities of the Nature Conservancy and the priorities of this accelerator. And really what we try to do is find companies that we at TNC can really help. And so, specifically within the tackle climate change piece, I'll just flag that renewable energy companies would probably not be a great fit for the accelerator. There's other clean tech accelerators out there that are better positioned to offer more support. TNC doesn't have a lot of expertise around, renewable energy development. Our expertise in the renewable energy world is really around renewable energy siting. But when you talk about tackle climate change, what we're really trying to find are companies that can help the Nature Conservancy and the conservation movement kind of make the case for natural climate solutions, right? We did a global study a couple of years ago that found that a full 1/3 of the Paris climate commitments could be achieved through investing in natural climate solutions. So investing in nature as a carbon sink, right? Whether that's protecting standing forests, stopping deforestation, increasing reforestation and afforestation, whether or not that's changing agricultural practices to sequester more carbon, whether or not that's protecting mangroves because they're such a great source for carbon. Those are the types of technology that we really look for, companies that can help us facilitate a world where more companies and more governments are investing in natural climate solutions as a part of the really important piece that it plays in tackling climate change. So I'm happy to talk through that in more detail, but wanted to share, our recruiting themes here because it does give more detail when we talk about, tackling climate change. What do we actually mean here? Hopefully that's helpful. Again, check out that link that Hannah posted. All right, I think that's it. In case there are any other last questions, really want to just thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you. I mean, as you can tell from Renee and Hannah, we all just have a phenomenal amount of respect for the work that you do, the sacrifices that you make on a daily basis. Thank you guys for everything, for helping create the future that we need. Maybe I'll actually end with this quote really quickly, and then we'll go ahead and shut off the Blue Jeans Drive. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. So I was telling Renee and Hannah and Brian before the call that I've been thinking a lot about this quote lately. Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. That, I believe, is our basic function. to develop alternatives to existing policies to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. It has been remarkable to me over the past 3 weeks to see what we thought previously was politically impossible happen almost overnight once the realization of the crisis at hand hit people. I think you will see a similar trajectory when people recognize the crises that are climate change, that is water scarcity, that is food availability. And as you see that recognition happen globally, we will start to see things move at a pace that seemed incomprehensible beforehand. So for whatever that's worth, I thought it was a decent note to end on. So thanks everybody again. Look forward to being in touch with anyone who's interested in learning more about the accelerator, and to everyone else, go get them. All right, see everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.